At 12 midday, the news on BBC One Northern Ireland from Lakshmi Gopal.
Good afternoon. The Prime Minister, Health Secretary and ministers from the Treasury are meeting health experts in Downing Street to try to tackle the ongoing challenges facing the NHS in England. With record waits for ambulances dropping patients off at A&E and reports of patients spending days on trolleys because of a lack of beds, senior doctors say the health service is on a knife edge. Our correspondent Sean Dilley reports.
How bad is the NHS crisis?
It's a good question.
What difference will today make?
And there's another that the Health Secretary Steve Barclay and ministers could be asked by those attending. On the front line, the pressures are clear.
We've come into 31 patients on the corridor and 4 patients on ambulances. There are 85 patients awaiting a medical bed. So these are patients that have been seen in A&E and been seen by the medical doctors and are deemed to need to stay in. They need further care on a medical ward. Unfortunately, there aren't any medical beds available.
The Wiston Hospital in Merseyside is not alone. It's a similar picture across the country. Strike action and high levels of COVID and flu are contributing to the pressures. 7 million people in England are waiting for non-urgent operations. The government says it's called today's meetings to tackle the most crucial challenges. Its 4 areas of focus will be GP services, emergency care, waiting lists and delays in discharging patients into social care. Today's talks have been called by the government and are being led by the Prime Minister. Health leaders, clinicians and medical experts are among those attending. But one of today's attendees, the Health Secretary Steve Barclay, is preparing for more talks on Monday. He's meeting union leaders to discuss next year's pay settlement, but they say they're still unhappy with this year's.
They want to talk about the future and they want to talk about this in broad terms. We'll, of course, go to the meeting and make the case for nursing in all forums, but it's sadly not what's going to prevent the strike action that's planned for 10 days' time.
Today, though, the government says it wants to focus on unwarranted variations in performance in different areas. But senior doctors have been warning for some time that the NHS as a whole has been operating on a knife edge. Sean Dilley, BBC News.
Our political correspondent Damien Grammaticus joins us now from Downing Street. Damien, will this meeting go any way towards tackling the crisis?
Well, one thing it certainly will do is address the sort of political need for Downing Street to be seen to be doing something in this current crisis. So it addresses that. But this is much more a sort of strategy, long-term thing, assembling these leaders here. There was a meeting like this back in December. We're still in this situation now. This might be sharing best practice, but that's a long-term thing. And as you were hearing there, what the unions say is that the real issue now is pay and conditions, a shortage of staff, an inability to hire enough staff, and they say that has to be addressed as the core issue. The government, though, politically, that's a problem. It does not want to talk about pay right now. And the opposition, well, what they say is that this is too little too late. They say the problems are down to 13 years of what they call mismanagement, and this itself will not address the current crisis.
Damien, thank you. Today marks the last day of planned strike action on Britain's railways, with members of the RMT union carrying out their second 48-hour strike this week in a row over pay and conditions. It comes as train drivers from the ASLEF union, who've also been striking, were offered a 4% pay deal over 2 years in exchange for a change to working practices. Our business correspondent Mark Ashdown is outside London's King's Cross. Mark, how likely is it that we'll see a resolution to the disputes anytime soon?
Well, hope springs eternal, doesn't it? I'm afraid, though, today it's the usual drill on a strike day. Just 20% of services across the UK running. Here at King's Cross, I have to say the boards are blank at the moment. Any trains that do run will be finished by about 6 p.m. this evening. Many areas of the UK will have no service whatsoever. As you say, though, the good news, once this 48-hour strike finishes tonight, there are no more strike dates in the diary. This dispute, though, is far from being resolved. Remember, it's been long running since June, involving 40,000 members of the RMT union. Half work for the 14 rail companies, half for Network Rail. It's over pay, jobs and working conditions. Now, there is a pay offer on the table, that remains, but it's some of these conditions that are really red lines for the unions. For example, driver-only operated trains. Now, you know that when you're on a train, the guard tends to operate the doors. Well, the companies want the drivers to do that more and more. That is, as I say, a red line for the union. But we are hearing overnight, possibly that could be now up for negotiation and possibly be removed from the deal. Now, that would need endorsement from the government. The good news is there are fresh talks planned for Monday, hosted by the Rail Minister Hugh Merriman. So they would need, of course, to sign off on that. But in the meantime, the government, of course, is pushing ahead with these plans for anti-strike laws. That would mean in future any strikes would mean a minimum level of service needs to be maintained in things like ambulances, the fire service and on the railways. So difficulties in the background there. The unions already said they could challenge that in the court. Labour has said if they got into power, they would repeal any new laws. So we have a new year, but the same old issues, fresh talks, fresh optimism. But of course, that could all change and there could be more strikes in a flash.
Mark, thank you very much. In the US, Kevin McCarthy has been elected Speaker of the House of Representatives after heated exchanges which almost saw fellow Republicans come to blows. It took 15 rounds of voting for Mr McCarthy to win the job, despite his party having a majority in the chamber. Our correspondent Sancha Berg has the details.
After more than 4 days, it was over.
Which the Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 216.
To cheers from Republicans in the House. The Democrat leader, Hakeem Jeffries, handed over the gavel.
Kevin McCarthy.
To the new Speaker's clear relief.
That was easy, huh? I never thought we'd get up here.
This should have been a straightforward process after Republicans won a slim majority in the House last year. It usually takes just one ballot. Not this time.
A speaker has not been elected. A speaker has not been elected. A speaker has not been elected.
It took 15 ballots because right-wing Republicans refused to vote for their own party leader. After arm twisting and promises, some shifted. But this process and the concessions granted to break the deadlock mean problems most likely lie ahead.
Basic functions of government, like funding the government, like having basic rules for how bills become a law, all of that's going to stop as well. So we're going to see a lot of problems going forward.
It's 2 years since the Capitol came under attack. The problems now are part of Donald Trump's legacy. His supporters, the ones who've delayed this vote. Sancha Berg, BBC News.
Police are searching for a couple who've gone missing with their newborn baby after their car broke down on a motorway. Constance Martin and Mark Gordon left the car near Junction 4 of the M61 near Bolton on Thursday night and walked towards Anchor Lane Bridge. Officers believe Ms Martin had recently given birth and that neither she nor her baby had seen medical professionals. A 6-year-old boy has been detained by police after shooting a teacher in the US state of Virginia. The shooting happened at Rich Neck Elementary School in the city of Newport News. It's unclear how the child obtained the gun, but officers say the incident wasn't an accidental shooting. Sport now, and when it comes to non-league sides causing FA Cup shocks, Boreham Wood's story is worthy of an Oscar. The team, based in the town famous for its Elstree film and TV studios, is competing in the third round for the third year in a row. Once again, they're the lowest ranked team left in the competition and today host Accrington of League One. Mike Bushell has the story.
The best TV shows run and run with series after series, and not to be outdone, the football team in the shadow of the Queen Vic and studios, famous for films and shows like EastEnders and Strictly, now has its own sequel in the FA Cup.
Boreham Wood are doing it once again in the FA Cup.
After last season's heroics when Boreham Wood won at places like Bournemouth, the non-league side are now creating more fairy tale storylines that scriptwriters will be proud of.
It's astronomical. It's massive for a club of our size to go on a cup run.
And they've done it once again. Boreham Wood are making a habit of this.
Knocking out League One Bristol Rovers, earning a place in the third round of the Cup for the third season running, and continuing to enthrall the town's most famous faces.
Bewood Army! It's fantastic, I'm incredibly proud. You often see some of the team popping out for lunch and things like that, and I always say hello to them. I just think they're incredible.
During the pandemic, the chairman remortgaged his own house to keep staff employed and the club together, and is now reaping the rewards. Last year's FA Cup run, including a fifth-round tie on national TV up at Everton, brought in £1 million, allowing the chairman to spend double that, some on the team, the rest on the infrastructure, the ground, including the aptly named Oscars Suite, where memories of the films he worked on don the walls, as he celebrates now a new kind of golden ticket.
The film industry gave me, everything, really. It gave me the base to buy the club, it gave me the base to, to build the club in an image that I wanted it. And the FA Cup run's sort of given me a platform to move the club on to another level.
And strictly speaking, the pride is shared by some of the stars who work in the town.
Come on, Boreham Wood, be fabulous. It could even be a 10 from me.
And if they can beat League One Accrington today, Boreham Wood will be writing the script for another FA Cup blockbuster.
It's the glory of the FA Cup. We know there's an upset. We know it's coming. It's just, will it be here at 5 o'clock on Saturday night?
Mike Bushell, BBC News in Boreham Wood.
And you can see more on all of today's stories on the BBC News channel. The next news on BBC One is at 5:20. Have a good afternoon. Bye for now.